Hey there. Tonight we're stepping gently into a world of drafty chambers, smoky hearths, and medical ideas that make modern cough syrup look like a miracle dot. So, before we wander into the past, settle yourself somewhere comfortable, tuck the blanket closer, and if you enjoy this style of softly told, slightly peculiar history, you're welcome to subscribe, only if it feels right to you. Right. The jug is earthenware, its glaze chipped along the rim, but it holds the morning's prescribed tonic. You lift the lid and sniff. The sharp, sweet tang of wine mixed with herbs rises to meet you. Dot, it smells promising. But you know better than to trust appearances, Dot. The liquid is deep red, flecked with sprigs of rosemary and a pinch of cinnamon. Dot. Someone insisted this concoction would keep your humors balanced, warm your blood, and drive out phlegm. You pour it carefully into the cup, the stream gurgling against the wood dot. Steam curls faintly, though whether from heat or simply the clash of scents is uncertain. That you take a cautious sip, Dot. The taste is sharp, spiced, and unmistakably alcoholic, Dot. It burns its way down your throat, leaving a trail of heat that spreads into your chest, Dot. For a moment you feel alive. Then you realize you're also slightly lightheaded. You wonder if the physician truly intended this, or if tavern keepers and doctors have been sharing recipes. A reality check. Much of medieval medicine was wine with a little garnish, Dot. Add a sprig of sage, call it a cure for melancholy, Dot. Add pepper, declare it a treatment for cold stomachs, Dot. The only guarantee was that by the bottom of the cup, you might not care quite as much about your ailment. The room fills with the aroma as you drink, sweet spice mingled with the faint smoke from the hearth, Dot. The combination is pleasant, though your tongue insists it is more suited for feasts than cures, Dot. You lick your lips and find them sticky, the wine clinging like resin, Dot. Perhaps that means the medicine is working, Dot. Or perhaps it means you'll spend the morning dozing in the corner, Dot. You set the cup down and look at the jug again. There's enough left for another round, but you hesitate. The last thing you need is to cure your imbalance by tumbling sideways into the rushes on the floor, Dot, still comma. You wonder if the physicians counted on this effect, Dot. After all, a patient who's asleep cannot complain about his treatment. Across the street, you hear the clatter of hooves, the day beginning as carts rattle over frozen stones, Dot. You wrap your cloak tighter, the tonic warming you from within while the wind creeps through the shutters. For a moment, the world feels bearable, the straw pallet forgotten, the cold dulled, and your humors, at least according to the spiced wine, firmly restored, Dot. You breathe deeply, catching once more the mingled scents of rosemary and smoke, Dot. The tonic may not be a miracle, but it leaves you steadier than when you woke, Dot. And with steadiness comes appetite, the first pangs of hunger reminding you that a tonic alone will not see you through the morning. And so, with the jug drained enough to count as medicine taken, you step back from the hearth, ready to discover the next recommended cure, a generous bleeding, offered far too cheerfully before breakfast, Dot. Dot, you tug your cloak closer, still feeling the faint burn of the tonic in your chest. Dot, your head is clearer now, or perhaps just slightly fuzzier. It's hard to tell the difference. But any comfort is short-lived, because as you step into the courtyard, a physician's apprentice is already waiting with a bowl, a cloth, and an unsettlingly eager smile, Dot. He explains, with the tone of someone reciting sacred truth, that your headache stems from an excess of blood. Dot. Too much vigor, too much warmth, a dangerous imbalance that must be drained, Dot. You try to argue that perhaps you simply slept poorly, but he waves off the idea, Dot clearly, comma. He says, your humors are plotting against you. The solution is simple. Remove some of you until you feel better. The tools are laid out with casual confidence. A small lancet, sharp and glinting in the pale light, and a collection of leeches squirming lazily in a shallow dish. Buzz. The lancet is wrapped in cloth to keep it clean, though you suspect the cloth has met more sleeves than soap. The leeches, meanwhile, wriggle as if eager to join in the treatment. If you're told both options work equally well, though well here feels like a generous word. You sit reluctantly on a stool. The apprentice ties a strip of linen around your arm, tightening it until your hand tingles. He hums a little tune, which is meant to soothe you, though it mostly suggests that he's done this far too often. You glance at the leeches again, their glossy bodies glinting, and wonder how many patients left with fewer problems than they arrived with. Now close your eyes, let your shoulders loosen, and imagine the cold air of a medieval morning brushing your face. You wake in a chilly chamber, the shutters rattling faintly in the early breeze. The straw in your mattress crunches as you shift, its prickly ends poking your ribs through the thin linen. Your breath clouds in the air, a small puff that hangs before fading into the dim light. The wool blanket clings to your skin, rough and smelling faintly of smoke from last night's fire. A reality check. Bloodletting was one of the most common treatments for everything from fever to fatigue. It rarely helped, but it was satisfyingly dramatic, which may have been enough for both doctor and patient to believe it worked. You imagine people stumbling home afterward, paler and dizzier, but comforted by the thought that their black bile, or yellow bile, must surely be happier now. The apprentice sharpens his lancet against the edge of the bowl. The sound is faint but grating, metal scraping. Ceramic. You swallow hard, wondering if you should have stopped at 2 cups of tonic wine instead of 1. At least then, the coming treatment might feel like less of a performance. He pricks your arm quickly, a sting sharp enough to make you hiss. A few drops fall into the waiting bowl. The apprentice nods approvingly, as if blood flowing is proof of medicine working. He wipes your arm with the same cloth and reassures you that your headache will fade in no time. You notice, however, that the only thing fading is the color from your face. Still, when the cloth is tied and the lancet tucked away, you do feel different. Perhaps lighter, perhaps dizzier. Perhaps, you think wryly, that's the point. A patient too unsteady to stand is a patient too unsteady to complain. The apprentice beams, gathering his tools and bowing with theatrical pride. He assures you that your balance has been restored. Your blood, he says, is now in harmony with the universe. You suspect your humors feel no different, but your sleeve certainly looks worse for wear. And so, with your arm tender and your head no clearer, you make your way back inside, where another test of health awaits, this time in the form of a glass flask of your own urine, held up to the light as though it were a fine vintage. You sit once more by the hearth, arm still tender beneath your sleeve. Before you can fully collect yourself, the physician insists on a second examination, one that requires far less blood, but considerably more dignity sacrificed. A glass flask is placed before you, its contents unmistakable. Your urine, carefully collected, now glows a pale yellow in the morning light. The physician lifts it with reverence, holding it up as though he were admiring a goblet of wine. He tilts it, peers closely, and nods, with the gravity of a man who believes the universe has just spoken. He explains the theory with great confidence. The color, the clarity, the scent, all these reveal the state of your inner humors. Golden and bright. Your health is strong. Too pale. Your humors are sluggish. Too dark. Melancholy threatens. Too cloudy. Well, you may not wish to hear the rest. You shift uncomfortably as he sniffs the flask. Yes, he really does sniff it. Apparently, aroma holds secrets that eyes alone cannot uncover. You wonder briefly whether this practice is more science or performance, but the physician's solemn expression brooks no laughter. He scribbles a few notes, his quill scratching across parchment with exaggerated importance. A reality check. Urine charts were a mainstay of medieval diagnostics. Manuscripts survive with neat circles of painted yellow, each shade labeled with curious Latin descriptions. It seems more like a painter's palette than a physician's handbook. You imagine some poor apprentice tasked with matching patients' samples to the nearest shade of golden ochre. The physician declares your urine slightly melancholy. You frown, unsure whether that means you are ill or merely prone to sighing by the window on cloudy days. Either way, he prescribes moderation in food, rest when possible, and perhaps another small bleeding to be safe. You silently hope the tonic jug is still nearby, for a second cup seems the kinder cure. He sets the flask back on the table, its pale contents sloshing gently. The room smells faintly sharper now, a reminder that not all diagnostic tools are pleasant to behold. Still comma. The ritual is treated with respect, and you marvel at how much weight a simple liquid can carry in the balance of life. The fire pops, sending a small spray of sparks upward. You follow them with your eyes, their brief glow far more comforting than the physician's lecture. The sparks die quickly, settling into ash, and you decide you feel more soothed by their warmth than by any promise of humors being balanced. The physician gathers his things, satisfied that today's examination has revealed your inner truths. You are left with a lingering thought. Sometimes medicine feels less like healing and more like theater with very curious props. You sit up slowly, joints stiff from the cold. A draft snakes under the door, sliding along the stone floor to chill your toes. You rub your hands together, trying to coax a little warmth back into them. But as you do, you remember the real reason for your unease. Your humors feel out of balance. That's what the physicians would say, at least. According to them, health depended on 4 mysterious fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. And so, with the flask returned to the shelf and the diagnosis still echoing in your mind, you tie your cloak and step toward the door, ready to carry a pouch of herbs around your neck, because in this world, smelling good is thought to keep sickness away. Too much of one, or too little of another, and your body drifted into sickness. It's a neat system on parchment, though in practice it feels more like an apprentice cook describing stew gone wrong. You frown, considering whether your heavy head means you've got too much phlegm or too little of something else. A reality check. You probably just slept badly. But in this world, that would never do as an explanation. Here, every cough, ache, or restless night must be proof that your inner cauldron of fluids is misbehaving. You wonder briefly which unlucky cousin first volunteered to test that theory. Surely he didn't survive long enough to feel vindicated. Beside the pallet, a small earthenware cup holds the remnants of last night's drink. You lift it to your nose, the sour tang of ale gone flat. Not refreshing, not even appetizing, but certainly safer than water drawn from the nearest well. You set it aside with a sigh, thinking you'll need something stronger to fix these so-called humors. The faint toll of a bell drifts from the town square, its low voice shivering through the chill air. You swing your legs from the bed, your feet meeting cold stone that feels more like ice than floor. You shiver and pull your cloak close, telling yourself that if bloodletting is the prescribed remedy, you'd at least prefer to be warm while it happens. You glance at the small chest in the corner, its iron clasp stiff with rust. Inside lie your few belongings: a tunic, a pair of cracked shoes, and a sprig of dried rosemary tied with twine. Some say the herb keeps bad air at bay. Others say it sharpens the mind. You press it briefly to your nose, letting its sharp scent cut through the musty room. Dot. Quaint comfort, perhaps, but better than another whiff of stale straw. The fire has long since died, leaving only a curl of ash and the memory of heat. Dot. Your stomach growls softly, though the thought of breakfast makes you wary. Dot. If your humors are truly out of line, then the physician's cure will almost certainly appear before the cook's, and it usually involves a basin, a blade, and a confident explanation that bleeding you a little thinner will make you stronger. Dot. You sigh again, pulling your cloak tighter. Whether it's your humors or the cold, you'll need to find some remedy soon. Dot. Perhaps a tonic, perhaps a leech, or perhaps, more wisely, just a hot drink and a fire. Dot. And so, with straw still clinging to your cloak and the chill biting at your toes, you step carefully toward the door where a morning tonic, spiced and suspicious, waits to greet you before the day truly begins. Dot. You shuffle toward the table by the hearth where a small jug and a wooden cup wait for you. You step into the lane, the cold air curling around your cloak. Dot. This time, you carry with you a small pouch tied neatly with twine. Dot. It hangs from your neck, swinging against your chest as you walk. Dot. And inside are herbs, rosemary, sage, lavender, anything with a strong enough fragrance to keep bad air at bay. Dot. The physician told you the plague rides on foul smells. Miasma, he called it, a vapor that seeps into your pores and poisons your humors. Dot. The cure. Carry sweetness wherever you go. You watch as the man settles uneasily onto the stool, hands gripping his knees while the barber readies his iron pliers. A reality check. There was no concept of sterilization here. Dot. The knife scraped on the boot, the pliers rinsed in water. At best. Dot. It was effective, in the sense that the tooth did come out. Dot. But whether the patient left healthier is a different question entirely. Dot. The barber places a reassuring hand on the man's shoulder, then grips the tooth with a practiced twist. A muffled grunt, a quick motion, and the job is done. Dot. The patient rocks forward, clutching his mouth, while the barber drops the tooth into a small wooden cup. Dot. He holds it up proudly for the crowd, as though he has won a prize in some peculiar contest. The man, pale and sweating, is handed a cloth to bite on and a sip of ale for his trouble. Dot. The barber, meanwhile, wipes his tools once more, then beckons for the next customer. It could be a bad leg, a festering cut, or simply a long beard. He'll see to it all with the same confidence. Skill, in his hands, is less about knowledge and more about speed. Dot. You turn away slightly, not eager to be chosen for the next demonstration. Dot. Your pouch of herbs feels suddenly more reassuring, even if all it can cure is your nerves. Dot. The smell of rosemary and lavender is preferable, at least, to the metallic tang now drifting from the surgeon's table. The crowd murmurs approval, some shaking their heads, others nodding with relief that today, at least, they are not the ones seated on the stool. Dot. You tighten your cloak and step aside, your thoughts lingering on how thin the line is between barber and doctor, between remedy and ordeal. And so, with the sound of knife against leather still echoing in your ears, you walk further down the lane where another chamber waits, and within it a woman cries out in childbirth, surrounded not by physicians but by her neighbors and a trusted midwife. Dot. You step into the dim chamber, where the air is thick with the mingled smells of sweat, smoke, and damp straw. Dot. At the center lies a woman in labor, her face flushed, her breath coming in sharp bursts. Around her cluster the neighbors, women of every age, sleeves rolled high, hands ready with cloths, water, and quiet encouragement. Dot. The fire in the corner crackles low, casting long shadows that waver across the wall. Dot. It feels less like a medical scene and more like a gathering of community, bound by necessity and ritual. Dot. The midwife presides at the bedside, her movements brisk but gentle. Dot. She carries no shiny instruments, no jars of leeches, no flasks of urine to inspect. Her knowledge is carried in memory and practice, passed down through generations of women who have seen more births than any learned physician ever will. Dot. She mutters a prayer under her breath, half to steady her own hands, half to call for divine favor in this uncertain hour. One of the neighbors ties herbs above the bed, rue and rosemary, believed to ward off evil. Another sprinkles holy water near the threshold because you never know when spirits might wander in at the worst possible moment. You watch as the rituals layer one atop another, a blend of faith, habit, and precaution. No one questions them. When life hangs in the balance, a charm is as welcome as a cup of broth. A reality check. Physicians rarely attended births unless disaster struck. The childbearing was women's work, and it carried dangers that even the most experienced midwife could not always prevent. The mortality rates were grim, though you notice no one speaks of that aloud. Instead, they murmur encouragement, as if words themselves can pull mother and child safely through. The woman cries out again, gripping the hand of her sister until knuckles whiten. The midwife nods firmly, urging her onward. Her voice is low, steady, anchoring the storm of pain. Outside, a cart rattles past on the street, a mundane sound that jars oddly against the intensity of the chamber. Beside the hearth, water boils in an iron pot, steam rising into the smoky air. Cloths are dipped, wrung out, pressed to the mother's forehead. The neighbors move with practiced rhythm, some tending the fire, some fetching clean rushes for the floor. It is a chorus of hands, each pair small but vital in its task. You glance at the midwife again. Her face is calm, though her eyes are sharp. She carries both the reverence of a healer and the suspicion of someone often watched too closely. So here you are, a walking spice cupboard, hoping the aroma convinces illness to keep its distance. You lift the pouch to your nose, inhaling the sharp, resinous bite of rosemary mixed with the softer sweetness of lavender. It's pleasant enough, though you suspect you now smell less like a healthy patient and more like a badly seasoned roast. Still, everyone does it. So you adjust the cord and let the little talisman rest proudly on your chest. Midwives, after all, were praised as saviors in good times and whispered about as witches when misfortune struck. A paradox she must live with every day. The labor continues, the rhythm of cries and murmurs filling the room. The herbs sway gently in the draft, their sharp scent cutting through the heavy air. You draw your cloak tighter, both chilled by the cold stone walls and warmed by the strange intimacy of the scene. It is not science in the way books would describe it, but it is care, knowledge, and endurance woven together. And in this world, that often proves stronger than any lancet or leech. And so, with the midwife's steady hands still guiding the birth, you step quietly back into the corridor, where a priest approaches, ready to bless the sick in the next chamber before any further treatment begins. You follow the narrow corridor, where the air grows cooler and quieter. At the far end, a door creaks open to reveal another chamber. This one holds a man pale with fever, his breath shallow, his eyes half closed beneath heavy lids. At his bedside stands a priest, a small vial of holy water in one hand, a wooden cross in the other. Before any herbs are gathered, before any blade is drawn or cloth prepared, the ritual begins with prayer. The priest murmurs Latin verses, his voice steady and low, rising and falling like a lullaby. The family gathered in nearby crosses themselves, some kneeling, others clutching rosaries worn smooth by constant touch. The air seems heavier for it, as if faith itself thickens the room. Religion was entwined with medicine. To be healed meant not only mending the body, but cleansing the soul. A sickness might be punishment for sin, a fever, a trial of faith, A cough, the whisper of divine displeasure. So blessings and confession often came before broth or bandages. You watch, wondering whether comfort or cure is the greater goal. The priest sprinkles holy water over the man, droplets glistening on his skin like dew. He traces the sign of the cross over his forehead, then leans closer, whispering words only the sick man can hear. The family exhales softly, relief mingled with fear, as though the prayer itself might hold back death at the door. A reality check. Prayer did not kill fevers, but it eased the minds of those watching, and perhaps even steadied the heart of the one enduring it. In a world where remedies were uncertain, certainty of any kind was precious. You realized that belief itself was a kind of medicine, one that did not rely on herbs or stars. The chamber smells faintly of wax. A single candle burning low on the table. Its flame wavers in the draught, casting soft shadows across the priest's lined face. Behind it, the hearth sits cold, the woodpile nearly gone. The family has chosen to spend coin on holy rites first, firewood second. It is a decision both practical and desperate. The man stirs faintly, his lips moving as if echoing the prayer. The priest nods, satisfied, then steps aside for the women of the house to bring broth and cloths. The ceremony done, the body can now be tended with earthly care. You step back, letting the murmurs of both faith and family fill the space. Outside the chamber, the corridor smells different. Vinegar, rosemary, and sharp wine drifting in from the next room. It is the scent of disinfectant, as close to cleanliness as this world knows. And so, with the echo of prayers still in your ears, you follow the sharp scent down the hall, toward bowls of herbs steeped in vinegar, a cure meant as much for the nose as for the wound. You step into the next room, and at once the sharp tang of vinegar stings your nose. It prickles in the air, mixing with the stronger scent of rosemary sprigs tossed into the basin of water by the bed. A woman dips a rag into the liquid, wrings it out, and presses it gently to the forehead of a boy flushed with fever. The sour fragrance fills the chamber, meant to cleanse the space and drive out the unseen vapors that everyone believes carry sickness. Cleanliness is attempted here, though it bears little resemblance to soap and scalding water. Instead, sharp smells are trusted to push away illness. Vinegar for wiping tables, rosemary to purify the air, sometimes wine poured directly into wounds, with the hope that its bite will frighten the infection out. The boy winces at the cool cloth, but his mother whispers that the sting means it is working. You notice the cloth, once rinsed, returns to the basin with all the others, which makes you quietly wonder how much is being cleansed and how much simply passed around. A reality check. Plague doctors, in their famous beaked masks, carried this idea further. The beak was stuffed with herbs, flowers, vinegar-soaked cloth, all meant to cleanse the air before it entered the lungs. It looked impressive, but it did little more than guarantee the doctors smelled peculiar while tending the sick. As you walk, you notice neighbors carrying their own charms. One woman clutches a nosegay of violets, lifting it to her face every few steps. A reality check. Vinegar and herbs do have some use. Their sharpness masks unpleasant smells, and wine can dull pain for a moment. But against fever or plague, they were more comfort than cure. You breathe carefully, deciding the scent is more likely to clear your sinuses than heal your humors. Bundles of herbs hang above the hearth, sage and lavender drying slowly in the smoky air. Now and then, the mother tosses a handful onto the embers, sending up a fragrant cloud that spreads through the room. The smoke curls, clinging to the beams, a mixture of comfort and superstition. The boy coughs faintly, and the priest's blessing from the last chamber is repeated quietly, as though layering remedies might finally trap the illness between them. You sit near the wall, letting the aromas wash over you. The vinegar bites at the back of your throat, the rosemary sharp, the smoke softening it all with its woody haze. Your eyes water slightly, but no one else seems to notice. They are too intent on believing this brew of scents will hold sickness at bay. A jar of wine stands uncorked on the table, the physician insisting it be used both as drink and as wash. He pours a little over a cloth, swabbing the boy's wrist where a rash blooms faintly. The boy flinches, and the physician nods approvingly. Pain. He says, is the body's way of proving the cure is working. You raise an eyebrow, but keep your thoughts quiet. The chamber feels close, thick with smells and murmurs. And though your mind doubts, your body cannot help but respond. Your shoulders ease, your breath deepens, and the scents, odd as they are, soothe you in their familiarity. And so, with your senses still tingling from vinegar and rosemary, you step back into the hall, where someone warns you that bathing too often is unwise, lest the water seep into your pores and weaken your very health. You leave the vinegar-scented chamber only to be met with another piece of advice, spoken with the confidence of long tradition. Do not bathe too often. Water, they say, seeps into the pores, weakens the body, and leaves you vulnerable to sickness. Cleanliness, in this world is not measured by soap and steam, but by how well you avoid tempting fate with a plunge into warm water. You recall the public bathhouses once common in towns, where merchants, masons, and monks alike gathered for a soak. But in times of plague, or when preachers thundered about sin, such places were shuttered. Their steamy rooms denounced as dangerous. Better to stay dry, they argued, and keep your health intact, though your nose might disagree. The result is clear as you walk the street. The air carries a medley of wool, sweat, and smoke, layered on by weeks without washing. A spritz of rose water here, a pinch of powder there, but little soap, and rarely a bath. Perfume becomes the armor of the wealthy, herbs the shield of the poor. And you, still clutching your pouch of rosemary, realize you are part of the same fragrant defense. A reality check. Bathing did exist, and sometimes even with perfumed oils and steaming tubs. But it was sporadic, a festival treat, a noble's indulgence, not a daily ritual. For most, a splash of water on the face or a rinse of hands before meals was the limit of hygiene. You scratch absently at your sleeve, wondering if the itch is your straw bed or just the price of living in a world that distrusts baths. Inside homes, basins stand ready, filled with cold water fetched from the wells. Families share it, one after another, until the last child is rinsed in little more than cloudy memory. Soap, when used, is coarse and sharp with lye, scrubbing more skin than dirt. You dip your fingers into a nearby jug and wince at the chill, deciding a full bath may not be worth the shiver. Still, there is comfort in ritual. Combing hair to remove lice, rubbing herbs into skin, dusting garments with scented powder. It is not the absence of dirt, but the presence of effort that reassures. And in a world where sickness prowls, reassurance is as prized as health. The bell tolls again from the church tower, its echo reminding you how quickly days pass between meals, prayers, and small defenses. You pull your cloak tighter, accepting that your next true bath may be weeks away. Until then, the rosemary at your neck and the wine in your cup must suffice. A boy chews cloves like sweets, his teeth stained dark with spice. Another man ties a bundle of rue above his doorway, its bitter scent drifting. Whenever the wind stirs. The street smells less like a town and more like an overzealous apothecary. The mingling aromas mix with the less pleasant smells that never truly leave. Smoke from damp wood, the tang of horse dung, the sourness of refuse frozen in the gutters. The herbs help, but they do not erase. And so, With the scent of herbs still clinging stubbornly to your cloak, you follow the sound of whispers in the street, folk charms, amulets, and small spells promising to cure a cough when soap and baths cannot. You wrinkle your nose, deciding that perhaps even bad air is better than this crowded perfume. You tug the pouch again, letting its scent drift up. Perhaps it does nothing for illness, but it calms the mind. And in a world of coughs and fevers, a little calm is medicine enough. The bell of the church tolls in the distance, a slow and steady rhythm that carries through the frosty air. People pause in the street, some crossing themselves, others simply adjusting their herbal charms with nervous fingers. Faith and fragrance, bound together in fragile hope. You breathe in deeply once more, the lavender soothing against the sharp edge of winter. Your stomach growls faintly again, reminding you that herbs alone cannot fill it. Still comma. The pouch feels reassuring against your chest, like a small shield between you and the unseen. And so, with your herb-scented talisman swaying softly as you walk, you turn the corner, just in time to watch a barber surgeon lay out his knives, sharpening one on his boot before attending to a patient. You pause at the edge of the square, drawn more by curiosity than courage. A barber surgeon has set up beneath a timbered awning, his tools gleaming faintly on the wooden table beside him. Knives, saws, forceps, and a bowl of water that already looks less than clean. He hums to himself, a cheerful tune, as he drags a blade down the side of his leather boot to sharpen the edge. The rasping sound carries in the cold air, sending a peculiar shiver down your spine. In the Middle Ages, barbers and surgeons were often the same man. The red and white pole still seen outside barbershops today was born from this trade. The red for blood, the white for bandages, a practical advertisement for anyone in need of a haircut or an amputation. You glance at the pole nearby, its colors dulled by years of smoke and rain, and wonder how many customers asked for both a trim and a tooth pulled in one sitting. The barber surgeon wipes the blade on a cloth, then waves over his next patient, a man clutching his jaw in pain. Toothache, the barber declares, is easily fixed by removal. No mention of fillings, no talk of numbing herbs, just the swift solution of pulling it out. You drift toward the sound of voices, soft and secretive. In a narrow alley, a small crowd has gathered around a peddler with a wooden tray strapped to his chest. The tray rattles with trinkets, strings of beads, polished stones, scraps of parchment inscribed with prayers. Each item is promised to cure something, a cough, a fever, a restless night. The peddler's voice is low but persuasive, as though illness itself might overhear and slink away in defeat. You watch as a mother presses a coin into his palm. In return, he ties a small charm around her child's wrist, a bit of bread baked hard and etched with a cross. It is said to draw sickness out through the skin. The child gnaws on it immediately, which rather defeats the purpose, though the mother seems reassured all the same. Others step forward with their own ailments. A farmer asks for relief from aching joints. He receives a tiny amulet, a pebble wrapped in linen. The peddler assures him it was blessed under a certain moon, and that he must keep it in his pocket until spring. The farmer nods gravely, his faith as heavy as the stone itself. A reality check. Folk medicine was as common as leeches and lancets. When herbs failed and physicians charged too much, a whispered spell or a humble charm filled the gap. Whether it healed or not hardly mattered. Belief was often half the cure. And sometimes half a cure was all one could hope for. You glance down at your own pouch of herbs. Compared to these charms, it feels almost sensible. At least rosemary smells pleasant, while bread crusts and stones only weigh you down. Still, the faces around you soften as they clutch their tokens, their fear eased for a time. Perhaps reassurance itself is the most reliable treatment. Dot, the alley smells faintly of smoke and damp earth. The peddler's tray clinks as he moves on, his voice fading into the distance, promising relief in every town he passes. Dot. The crowd disperses, each person carrying home their tiny shield against unseen sickness. Dot. You linger a moment longer, noting how quickly superstition spreads when fear lingers in the air. You rub the sprig of rosemary between your fingers, the scent clinging sharp and green, and wonder if perhaps it is no different from the bread, except that your charm tastes better when boiled in stew. Dot. The church bell tolls again, a deep note rolling through the narrow street. Dot, above you. Smoke drifts from a chimney, carrying the pungent scent of herbs burned deliberately into the air. A house, you realize, has lit its defenses against the season's plague. And so, with charms rattling in your memory and smoke curling into the sky, you follow your nose toward the sharp aroma of burning sage and rue. Another attempt to keep sickness at bay, this time by filling the whole house with fragrant haze. Dot. You follow the trail of smoke until it leads you to a house with shutters drawn tight. Dot. From the cracks seeps a pungent haze, and when the door creaks open, the air nearly knocks you back. Inside, bundles of sage, rosemary, and rue smolder in the hearth, sending thick curls of bittersweet smoke across the rafters. Dot. The room is dim, lit only by the fire's glow, its beams coated with the residue of countless burnings. Dot. The family sits close to the flames, eyes watering, but faces calm. Dot. They believe the plague rides on foul air, miasma, a poison carried on the breeze. So they burn herbs to purify their home, filling every corner with scent strong enough, they hope, to chase the sickness out before it crosses the threshold. Dot. You cough lightly as the smoke presses against your throat. Dot. The air feels thick, as though you could chew it. Dot. Your cloak quickly soaks up the smell, a perfume you will carry for days. Dot. The family offers you a sprig of rue to wave under your nose, and you accept, though it does little more than add another layer to the crowded scent. A reality check. This smoky ritual was common during plague seasons. Sometimes aromatic herbs, sometimes plain straw, sometimes even pitch or resin. The goal was the same: drive away the invisible poison. In truth, it may have discouraged fleas and mice, though not nearly enough to explain why some houses escaped and others did not. On the table sits a bowl of vinegar, cloths soaking in it, ready to wipe down doors and handles. The sharp tang mingles with the herbs, a battle of odors fought on every surface. A daughter fans the smoke with a wooden board, pushing it into corners and beneath the bed. Her eyes stream, but her smile is firm. She believes she is saving her home. You sit for a while, letting the fire crackle and the haze blur the outlines of the room. Shadows ripple across the beams, and the scent clings heavy to your hair. It is not pleasant, but there is a peculiar comfort in seeing fear met with action, no matter how fragrant or futile. Outside, the evening deepens. The bell tolls faintly in the distance again, reminding you that the day drifts onward, measured by prayers, herbs, and smoke. You rise, nodding your thanks, and step back into the cold street, where fresh air feels suddenly sharp and clean. The stars prick the sky overhead, a scatter of light against the winter black. You notice a group gathered in the square, heads bent over a chart spread wide on a table. Astrological signs glimmer ink black in the candlelight, guiding the hand of a physician who insists the stars must approve before a single cut is made. And so, with smoke still clinging to your cloak and vinegar stinging faintly in your nose, you approach the square to watch as medicine consults not herbs or knives, but the slow and silent movements of the heavens. You edge closer to the square, drawn by the soft shuffle of parchment in the cold air. At a wooden table sits a physician, his cloak heavy with fur, his quill poised over a sprawling chart of stars and planets. Candles flicker around him, their light dancing across lines and circles inked in careful symmetry. The townsfolk gather near, peering over his shoulder with the kind of reverence usually reserved for priests. The physician taps the chart with his finger, explaining that no treatment can begin until the heavens are consulted. Mars rules the blood, the moon governs moisture, and Saturn lingers ominously over the bones. If Mars is too near the ascendant, then bloodletting must wait. If the moon is waning, a surgery might fail. You listen, wondering quietly whether the stars have ever been asked their opinion on leeches. A reality check. Astrology was woven deeply into medieval medicine. Doctors timed their procedures by the constellations, believing the body mirrored the cosmos. It lent grandeur to their work, but also meant you might wait days for the right alignment before anyone so much as glanced at your fever. The parchment rustles as the physician leans forward. He squints at the chart, then declares that tonight is unfavorable for bleeding, but excellent for purging with herbs. A murmur of relief passes through the crowd. After all, swallowing a bitter draught sounds kinder than losing more blood. You glance skyward, but the stars twinkle indifferently, as though unaware of the weight placed upon them. Beside the table, an apprentice holds a small wooden box. Inside lie the tools of the trade: a lancet, a mortar and pestle, a vial of dried sage. He waits for the physician's nod, ready to fetch whichever remedy the heavens demand. The boy yawns, his breath clouding in the night air, and you sense he has little faith in Mars or Saturn, but every faith in being paid by the hour. The crowd leans closer as the physician speaks again, his words rising with the authority of both scholar and priest. To them, the stars are not distant lights, but guides etched into the very flesh of the earth. As you watch the faces glow in the candlelight, each one calmed by the thought that the universe itself has been consulted. You shift your cloak, the smoke of burned herbs still clinging to it, and wonder whether the stars truly care about your humors. But no one here doubts. And doubt, you realize, is often a heavier sickness than fever. The bell tolls softly again, its chime blending with the murmur of voices and the scratch of quill on parchment. Beyond the square, you catch sight of a tall building, a hospital, its windows glowing faintly with candlelight. A place not just for astrology or vinegar, but for the curious blend of charity and chaos that passed for care. And so, with the stars glittering overhead and the physician still tracing Mars with his quill, you turn your steps toward the hospital doors, ready to glimpse a world where prayers, food, and bandages meant more than cures. You make your way toward the tall stone building, its narrow windows glowing faintly in the winter dark. The door creaks as you step inside, and a wave of mingled scents meets you: wax from the candles, the sharp tang of herbs, and the musty damp of straw laid thick across the floors. This is the hospital, though it bears little resemblance to the word as you know it. Here, healing is less about medicine and more about charity. A bed for the weary, broth for the hungry, prayers for the sick. Rows of pallets line the long hall, each with a figure curled beneath coarse wool blankets. Some mutter softly in fever dreams. Others stare at the ceiling beams blackened by years of smoke. Between them move attendants in plain robes, offering cups of warm broth or dipping cloths into basins of water to press against heated brows. The work is quiet, steady, more like tending a family than treating a disease. A crucifix hangs above the central aisle, catching the light of the candles. Every patient can see it from their bed. Healing here begins with the soul, for sickness is as much spiritual as physical. Priests move through the hall, murmuring prayers, their voices blending with the crackle of the hearth and the occasional cough. For some, the prayers may be the only comfort they receive. A reality check. Medieval hospitals were not places of miraculous cures. They were refuges run by religious orders, where rest and food often did more than the treatments themselves. If you entered with a fever, you might leave with it still, but at least you left cleaner, warmer, and less alone. Sometimes that was cure enough. You watch as a bowl of pottage is set gently into a patient's hands. He eats slowly, the steam rising to fog his tired face. Across the hall, a woman's wound is rinsed with wine, a sting that makes her grimace, but at least the effort is made. The attendants move on, their hands cracked from cold water and constant labor, but their rhythm unbroken. The hall smells of thyme and sage, herbs tucked into pillows to freshen the air. Some say they keep sickness from spreading. Others simply enjoy the way they mask the harsher scents of sweat and damp. The faint fragrance weaves through the hall, soothing even as fevers burn. A boy in the next bed stirs and whispers for his mother. An attendant leans close, smoothing the blanket, and answers softly that she is near. The boy sighs, settling back into the straw with the smallest of smiles. Here, the line between medicine and mercy blurs until it disappears. You stand quietly, watching the candle flames waver in the draft. The room feels hushed, heavy with both suffering and gentleness. It is not a place of miracles, but it is a place of humanity. And in this age, that may be the closest thing to healing. And so, with the murmur of prayers still echoing in your ears, you leave the hospital hall, returning to your own straw pallet, ready to rest once more, surrounded by charms, herbs, and whispers of hope against the night. You press a hand to your cheek, the dull throb of your tooth pulsing with each heartbeat. The ache has been building for days, gnawing at your patience until even the softest bread feels like a challenge. Tonight it flares hotter, a sharp reminder that teeth, though small, hold surprising power over comfort. You groan softly, wishing for relief. But in this age, the remedies are few and rarely gentle. A neighbor leans close, offering advice with the confidence of someone who has never had the problem themselves. You need the hot iron, he says firmly, as though branding your jaw is the most natural solution in the world. You blink, unsure whether he is serious. He nods again, clearly convinced. The idea, he explains, is to burn the pain away at its root. You imagine the smell of scorched hair, the hiss of heat against skin, and decide that perhaps enduring the ache is the wiser choice. Tooth pulling was the other favored cure, and the tools for it were often the same pliers used for blacksmithing or barbering. The barber surgeon you passed earlier still lingers in your mind, his iron forceps clutched like a prize. He could pluck the tooth, but the chances of breaking it in half were not small. You shudder, remembering that clean extractions were a blessing of later centuries. A reality check. There were no fillings, no numbing herbs strong enough to last, only the swift tug of iron or the searing kiss of heat. Dentistry, as a profession, is still centuries away. For now, the line between cure and ordeal is thin indeed. You rub your cheek again, half hoping the pain might be frightened away by your reluctance to act. The room is warm from the hearth, yet the ache chills you from within. Each crackle of the fire seems to echo in your jaw. You smell the faint sweetness of rosemary from the pouch at your neck, but it does little to dull the throb. The neighbor offers a clove to chew, a common remedy for toothache. You press it between your teeth, its sharp, spicy sting biting your tongue. The pain eases for a moment, or perhaps your mouth is too busy burning to notice the tooth. You lean back against the rough wall, eyes half closed, listening to the low murmur of voices around you. The fire's glow paints the rafters with a soft orange, flickering shadows that seem to rise and fall with your breath. The toothache pulses in rhythm, insistent but strangely dulled now, blurred by the spice of the clove and the heaviness of fatigue. Perhaps the hot iron will not be needed after all. Perhaps tomorrow the ache will fade on its own. though you suspect this is more wish than truth. Dot. For tonight, though, you settle into the straw, letting the warmth of the room and the steady hum of voices soften the edges of your discomfort. Dot. Pain and remedy blur together until they feel distant, less sharp, more like background noise to sleep. And so, with the clove's sting still lingering on your tongue and the fire's glow flickering softly across the room, you drift toward rest, unaware that the stars themselves will soon be consulted to decide when the next cure should begin. Dot. You wake in the dim chamber to the sound of scratching quills and murmured calculations. Not at your bedside, but just outside in the courtyard. A physician has spread out a parchment dotted with circles, lines tracing the paths of stars and planets across the heavens. Dot. Before he so much as glances at your swollen cheek or your weary frame, he insists on consulting the scale. Dot. Astrology and medicine here are woven tightly together. Dot. Mars governs the blood, the moon oversees moisture, and Saturn broods ominously over bones and teeth. It is explained to you, quite solemnly, that no sensible man would risk a tooth pulling or bloodletting if the wrong planet lingers in the wrong house. Dot. You nod politely, though you suspect Mars does not care much about the throbbing in your jaw. Dot. The physician peers up at the early dawn sky, then back at his parchment, comparing the faint stars above with the neat black lines below. His apprentice holds a lantern close, its light flickering across the ink until the constellations swim like living things. Dot. The physician frowns, muttering about Jupiter's slow passage, and shakes his head. Dot. Not today, he declares. Dot. Your tooth, it seems, is bound to ache until the heavens give their blessing. A reality check. In this world, timing mattered almost more than tools. Dot. Surgery might wait for a waning moon, bloodletting for a favorable alignment. It lent a sense of order to treatments, even if the patient's body was less convinced. Dot. You sigh softly, realizing you are at the mercy of stars that twinkle indifferently. Far above. Dot. The parchment rustles again as the physician marks a date. Dot. 2 nights hence, he says, the skies will open a safer window. Dot. Until then, you are advised to chew more cloves, rest in warmth, and pray that Saturn's influence eases its grip. The apprentice closes the lantern, and the square plunges back into the faint gray of dawn. Dot. You step away, the cold air brushing your face as the physician rolls his chart. Dot. The sound of the church bell drifts across the rooftops, marking another hour lost to calculation. Dot. Your tooth still aches. Your pouch of rosemary still swings at your chest. But the thought of the stars deciding your cure leaves you oddly amused. The sky lightens slowly, pale streaks of morning threading between the rooftops. Dot. Around you, townsfolk rise, their own charms and remedies tucked into pockets and pouches. Dot. You walk quietly, the ache in your jaw no less, but your heart lighter for the thought that somewhere above, Mars and Saturn argue over your fate. And so, with the physician's chart folded away and the sky paling toward morning, you turn toward the tall building at the edge of the square, a hospital where prayer, food, and humble care wait within its smoky halls. Dot. You step through the broad doors of the hospital, and at once a wave of sound and scent rolls over you. Dot. The hall is long, lined with rows of pallets laid out close together, each occupied by someone curled beneath coarse wool blankets. The air is thick with the smells of straw, smoke, and thyme bundled into corners to sweeten the atmosphere. Dot. Candles flicker on iron sconces, their light glancing across faces pale with fever, eyes half closed in restless dreams. A sister in a gray habit moves quietly between the beds, a wooden bowl of broth balanced in her hands. Dot. She stoops to feed a spoonful to a weary man, his lips trembling as he swallows, before tucking the blanket more snugly around his shoulders. Her gestures are steady, patient, more like tending to family than treating patients. Dot. Another attendant follows, carrying clean rushes for the floor, her arms dusted with straw, her cheeks ruddy from effort. Dot, this is the rhythm of a medieval hospital. Dot, less cure, more comfort. Dot. These halls are built not for miracles but for mercy. Dot, prayer and rest are considered as vital as any herb or blade. Over the doorway you noticed a crucifix, reminding each who enters that care begins with the soul, whether or not the body agrees. A reality check. Hospitals like this were often run by religious orders, places of charity for the sick and poor. Dot, food, warmth, and a bed off the street may not heal a wound, but they kept many alive who might otherwise have been lost. Dot, you realize, looking around, that survival here has as much to do with kindness as it does with medicine. A priest moves slowly through the ward, murmuring blessings. Dot. His voice blends with the faint crackle of the hearth, and for a moment, the chamber feels more like a chapel than a clinic. Dot. The sick cross themselves as he passes, even those too weak to rise, their hands trembling like leaves in the wind. Dot. You notice a woman clutching a small relic on her chest, lips moving with whispered prayers. Dot. No one questions her. Faith is another layer of care in these walls. The chaos of need and the order of ritual weave together strangely here. Dot. One corner hums with quiet sobs, another with the rasp of someone snoring despite their fever. Children's voices echo faintly from a side room, their coughs softened by the sound of attendants telling stories to calm them. Dot. The floor is uneven with straw, crunching underfoot, its earthy scent rising each time you step. Dot. You pause beside a window, narrow and high, where a draft seeps through. The cold air brushes your face, but the contrast makes the warmth of the hall all the more striking. Your cloak carries the scent of rosemary and smoke from earlier, but here it mingles with broth, beeswax, and the faint bitterness of wine poured onto wounds. Dot. For all its chaos, the place feels gentle. Dot. Less a battlefield against disease than a resting place where people wait together, sharing warmth, food, and prayers in equal measure. You let your shoulders relax, heartened by the steadiness of it, even if cures are few. Dot. And so, with the murmur of prayers and the crackle of the hearth still in your ears, you step quietly back into the night air, where your own straw pallet waits, alongside charms, herbs, and the peculiar hope that tomorrow may dawn a little lighter. Dot. You return at last to your chamber, shoulders heavy, feet dragging softly across the rushes strewn on the floor. The air inside is still and cool, touched faintly by the smoke of the hearth that died hours ago. Dot. Your straw pallet waits in the corner, uneven and prickly. Yet in this moment it looks like the most welcoming place in the world. Dot. You lower yourself onto it, the stalks shifting noisily beneath you, their earthy scent rising like a reminder of fields far beyond the town walls. Around you lies your small collection of defenses, a pouch of rosemary strung on twine, the stone charm bought from the alley peddler, a folded scrap of parchment with a priest's blessing inked in uneven Latin. Dot. You set them carefully within reach, arranging them almost like soldiers keeping guard around your bed. Dot. They may not ward off fever or plague, but their presence soothes the mind. Dot. And sometimes soothing the mind is half the battle. You pull your coarse blanket over your shoulders, its wool scratchy against your skin. Dot. The room smells of rosemary, wax, and straw, a curious perfume that feels both earthy and oddly calming. Dot. Yet your cheek still twinges faintly from the toothache, but the clove's lingering spice dulls it to a soft hum. Dot. It is not comfort exactly, but it is bearable. A reality check. None of these charms will cure you. Dot. Not the stone, not the herbs, not the parchment inked with blessings, but you feel calmer for having them near. Dot. And in an age when medicine is ritual as much as remedy, calm is its own kind of healing. Dot. You smile faintly at the thought, pulling the blanket higher until it covers your chin. Dot. Outside, the night deepens. Dot. The church bell tolls one last time, its sound softened by distance, a gentle pulse reminding the town to rest. Dot. B. The draft slips under the door, cool air brushing your cheek, but the blanket holds enough warmth to steady you. You shift against the straw, finding the least prickly spot, and close your eyes. Dot. The silence of the room is filled with faint sounds, timbers creaking in the cold, a dog barking distantly, your own breath rising and falling in steady rhythm. Dot. The shadows lengthen as the candle gutters low, its flame flickering before it shrinks to a pin of gold. Dot. Darkness folds gently around you, like another layer of cloth. Dot. Your thoughts wander, softer now. You picture the smoky tavern with its endless pot of stew, the barber's tools clattering in their tray, the priest's murmured prayers echoing in the hospital hall. Dot. All the strange, uncertain remedies of the day drift together into haze until they feel less like memories and more like dreams. Dot. You sigh once, deeply, the last of the day, leaving with your breath. Dot. The rosemary pouch rests against your chest, its sharp scent fading as sleep takes its place. Your fingers loosen against the coarse blanket, and the prickly straw beneath you no longer matters. Dot. The world narrows to the rhythm of your breathing, the heaviness of your eyelids, the soft weight of charms and prayers close at hand. Dot. Ritual or remedy, it no longer matters. Dot. You are safe enough, warm enough, and ready at last to surrender to rest. And so, with the night pressing quietly against the shutters and the faint scent of herbs curling around you, you drift into slumber, where dreams ask for no balance of humors, no charms or charts of stars, only the peace of sleep itself. Dot. End of script. Dot. Sweet dreams.